joining us right now from the Sacramento Bee. You can go to sacbee.com, and I believe I read yesterday 92% off your first month's subscription. Yeah, you know what? You pay a couple dollars, literally, and you get a ton of phenomenal journalism for less than a drink you might buy at the bar. And we, of course, talk to people like Matt Barrows, Marcos Bertone, run by Scott Labar, who I've known since I was 11. He's a good guy. Ryan Lillis, Tony Bijak, Dale Kasler. How could you not support the Sacramento Bee and our friend Chris Biderman, fresh back from the Combines out in the Midwest? Hello, Chris. It's Dave. How are you?
Hey, Dave. How's it going? Thanks for the plug.
Say that again?
I said thanks for the plug.
Hey, man, you know, we times they are a-changing. Ways that we consume media are changing, and I am all for good journalism, which you guys provide plenty of that. We were just going over, Chris, some of these weird-ass questions being asked at the combine. Do you have both testicles? Can we have a staring contest? Punching guys in the chest instead of shaking their hands.
So we're gonna hit you with some of those questions right now.
Chris.
Hey, what better way to start your week on a Monday morning, right?
Of course, nice punch in the chest. I know that we've heard it all before. This is why they do it. It's a psychological thing. You're trying to throw these guys off, blah, blah, blah. But I mean this with all respect to our men and women in uniform, but I feel like this isn't the military. You're not in a war zone. You're playing football, and to the best of my knowledge, Chris, they're not doing this in basketball or baseball. Why do you think they continue to ask these weird questions in the NFL Combine?
I think as time has gone on, these prospects have become so polished when it comes to interviews and answering the typical questions that you would get, whether, that's training via agents. I think, maybe some of these coaches or talent evaluators just kind of want to see how these guys react when they're a little bit uncomfortable. I don't think, with the staring contest thing, I don't know if Pete Carroll would really do that with a straight face. Really thinking that, this is going to make or break the interview. I could see Pete Carroll, from what little I've known about him and our interactions that we've had as beat reporters from this side of it, it just seems like that's something coaches might do to maybe loosen up the situation a little bit, maybe take some of the stiffness out of the room. I'm not entirely sure. But, yeah, I mean, when you have 60 interviews and you're doing this over a week, I think even on the coach's side, you would want to find ways to mix it up a little bit. So I know a lot of people talk about this kind of stuff, but and it definitely is weird. And I'm sure there's some people who do that stuff throughout the league that take it very seriously and really, wonder how people react to those situations. But I think there's also an element of just kind of mixing it up and throwing, curveballs at these prospects. So it's not so stuffy and all the, the cliched answers that you would get about giving 110% and football being the most important thing in your life and all that type of stuff.
Want to keep on the interviews here. The 49ers interviewed, I think, 5 receivers, I think I counted, that got reported. Is that something that you expect them to really prioritize in this year's draft? Yeah,
absolutely. And Ridley from Georgia basically said it. His main takeaway from his interview with the 49ers was that they told him they were looking for a receiver. So, Kyle, I know you and I have talked about it a lot on the Candlestick Chronicles podcast.
Ooh.
Sorry for the plug.
Yeah.
but the Niners sitting at number 36 in the second round, that looks like it's going to be a spot where they could potentially find a starting receiver. So it's pretty clear after moving on from Pierre Garçon, they need a receiver. It's off the depth chart, and I'm not sure they're going to pull off this trade for Odell Beckham Jr. that's gained a little bit of steam in media reports over the last week or so. But it definitely seems like they're going to target a receiver. And Kyle Shanahan said as much in speaking with us. He said, he wants to bring in guys that push guys like Dante Pettis and Marquise Goodwin and Kendrick Bourne either to be better through competition or just to overtake him, because it's clear the 49ers need to upgrade that unit if they want to get the offense to the next level and really consider themselves playoff contenders.
Chris Biderman joins us from the Sacramento Bee. Chris, does it really come down to the Niners are hoping Arizona does something silly and pass on Nick Bosa? Are we looking at Bosa, maybe a Josh Allen, Williams out of Alabama, or Rashawn Gary? Is it pretty safe to say that's probably one of those 4 guys will be their pick?
Yeah, I think so, and it really sort of solidified to me when talking to John Lynch about it. Both Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch said that the Niners were going to change the physical profile of their defensive ends, and so you guys like Cassius Marsh and Dakota Watson, they're not the biggest, most powerful guys, and John Lynch said the Niners are going to use more wide nine formations, and really the profile that they're looking for with those defensive ends is somebody with power. And so the first thing I thought of was, of course, Nick Bosa, because I think he's widely regarded as the most powerful defensive end prospect among a pretty talented group of edge rushers. And you look at a lot of those guys like Montez Sweat, who tested really well, Brian Burns, who also tested really well, and Josh Allen. Those guys aren't the same type of powerful players that Nick Bosa is. I think Bosa is really, with John Lynch saying that, I think it sort of emerged that Bosa should be the favorite for that number 2 overall pick, because all the buzz coming out of the combine was that Kyler Murray is going to go first overall. And I think it would absolutely make sense for the Cardinals, because if you're going to hire Cliff Kingsbury to be your coach, you might as well get the quarterback that really maximizes his offense, not bring a holdover back in Josh Rosen, who might not be a perfect fit, and then you're sort of left in this awkward quarterback purgatory. I think it would be smart of the Cardinals to take Murray, and then if you're the 49ers, you got to be jumping for joy at the fact that you finally get the edge rusher that you've been looking for since Aldon Smith was a productive player in 2013, 2014.
So you mentioned Kyler Murray and the prospect of him going number 1. That's something that you're buying. It isn't just a massive smokescreen by the Cardinals to try and up that value of the number 1 pick.
Yeah, it is something I'm buying. Like I said, because it's Cliff Kingsbury, because of the history he has with Kyler Murray, because of the Cardinals really needing to sort of infuse some energy into the organization. If they want to compete with the Rams, you have to look at Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury's offense as their best shot to really, compete for the division crown. If it gets fully maximized, and we don't know how well Cliff Kingsbury can get somebody like Josh Rosen to adapt to his offense, or if Kingsbury can adapt his offense to his quarterback. And I think if they bring in Kyler Murray, then it's really the best case scenario for the Cardinals, just in terms of getting the offense off the ground and being dynamic in the way that they would want to be to compete for an NFC West title. So to me, it makes a ton of sense. All the buzz, coming out of Indy would indicate that's true too. I think, you could look at the league rules with the emphasis on player safety and keeping quarterbacks out of harm's way. I think it makes sense for Murray, just given that he's not the biggest guy. And obviously people talk about Russell Wilson in Seattle and things like that. I just think it makes plenty of sense, and it sounds like everyone else throughout the league does. And, when you have the number 1 overall pick, I don't know what creating a smokescreen really creates anyway. Like, it's not like anyone can jump you. You're going to take the number 1 player, any player you want. So they could announce it right now, and I don't really know how it would hurt them from that standpoint. So, I am buying it, and it makes plenty of sense from my end. And we'll have to see. I mean, a lot can change in 2 months, but I think that's where we're going, because, you remember last year, no one really thought Baker Mayfield was going to end up being the number 1 overall pick, and then momentum grew in that direction, and then he ended up going first overall. And I think, he's not the same quarterback as Kyler Murray. He's a little bit different, but I think there's some similarities, particularly coming out of that Lincoln Riley offense at Oklahoma, and I could see it happening again this year.
So you mentioned that Nick Bosa, you think, is the guy for the Niners that they're circling and targeting. If he does fall to number 2, do you think that impacts the 49ers' willingness to engage in trade talks for Odell Beckham Jr.? Do you think essentially they would prioritize Bosa over Odell Beckham?
Well, that's really a great question, and I'm not sure what they're doing. They're playing things pretty close to the vest, obviously, but I can say when John Lynch was asked about the reports surrounding Odell Beckham Jr. and the Niners trading for it, it was a pretty casual conversation that we were having, and Lynch sort of clammed up a little bit and said, I'm not allowed to talk about any players on other rosters, and this was after talking about Antonio Brown, and he was a little bit more casual in having that conversation, obviously saying something similar. But I do think the 49ers are interested. I do think there's validity to those reports. But it's going to come down to whether or not if Bosa's on the board, I would imagine they take him, because if you look at the real contenders over the last few years, they have just stars on defense. And the 49ers really only have one star on defense right now in the prime of his career. And if they want to be legit contenders going forward, I think they need to add more stars on defense. And we've seen Kyle Shanahan manufacture offense with less than elite players. And that's not to say I don't think Odell Beckham Jr. would be a good fit. The 49ers are going to have to weigh Shanahan's ability to get good production from lesser-known players versus investing premium resources on defense, which I think they need if they want to compete for division titles going forward. So if I'm making the decision, I'm probably leaning more towards Bosa, but I think it would make plenty of sense for them to have a contingency plan in case Bosa went first overall, to then maybe get a trade package together that could involve Odell Beckham Jr. So you're still coming out of that number 2 pick with an elite player like OBJ. And then, if you move back in the draft, you could capitalize on the really deep edge class in the first round and maybe get a guy who isn't quite Nick Bosa's caliber, but still solves a significant need on defense, and allows you to continue building on that side of the ball.
And Chris, if they were to do that, if they were to go after Odell Beckham Jr. and trade back in the draft or somehow move that around and acquire him, just for fun, I know a lot of Niner fans are wondering the same thing. Would that effectively kill talks on Antonio Brown, or is there an outside shot they come back next year with Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham Jr. lined up for Jimmy Garoppolo?
I would be shocked. I'm trying to think of the way to describe how shocked I would be if they landed Odell Beckham and Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
I don't think it's happening. I think this team is very cognizant of how it uses its resources and is going to try to stay balanced and not invest too much money in a single position group. I kind of look at it as an either or scenario. I don't see how they would have the assets and want to make that type of investment. You're looking at probably $35 million in 2 receivers. And maybe you move on from Marquise Goodwin because you signed him to a 3-year deal last offseason. I don't know. I just don't really see how that could work. Although the Niners would be a very popular team on Madden if that were the case.
You mentioned a possible trade back from number 2. So let's say that trade does come to fruition, and they let's just for the sake of argument throw out. The Giants get the number 2 pick. The Niners get Odell Beckham in the number 6. Who might the Niners target? Who stood out to you in Indianapolis among this deep edge class that they might want to look at 6?
Definitely Brian Burns from Florida State. I know there are questions about his weight going into the combine and his ability to convert speed to power. He gained some 15 or 20 pounds since playing his final season in college, and looks like just athletically the exact type of player you would want coming off the edge. And he might be a little bit raw in terms of overall pass rushing, but I think if he builds his strength and continues to add weight to his frame, he could be a really good Pro Bowl type player, somebody who could give the 49ers double-digit sacks. Montez Sweat from Mississippi State, obviously running that record-breaking 4.140 is ridiculous. And he's faster than Odell Beckham Jr. His 40 time, which is crazy to think about it at 260 pounds or whatever he weighed in. But I think there are questions about his flexibility, his overall agility coming off the edge. It's being a pass rusher is obviously a lot more than straight line speed. So I'm curious to see how he translates to the next level. Obviously, his workout numbers are really, really impressive, and a lot of those numbers typically do translate to success in the NFL. But in terms of power, like John Lynch mentioned at the Combine, and presumably talking about Nick Bosa, I'm not sure that Burns or Sweat have the same level of power, and maybe Josh Allen might. He threw up 28 reps on the bench press, which is just one fewer than Bosa. So maybe he has more of that profile, but he's also a little bit, he's more of an outside linebacker type. The 49ers could use a Sam linebacker too. So they could justify the Josh Allen pick if he were to fall to, say, 6, like you mentioned. But I think Allen Burns and Sweat would probably be the top three guys. Maybe Cleveland Farrell. He didn't do the running drills at the combine. I'm not sure he's quite the same athlete as those guys. He might be more of a mid-first round pick type prospect. But also Devin White, the linebacker from LSU. Obviously, the 49ers losing Reuben Foster last year creates a void at linebacker, and they can certainly use a starter there. It's my personal feeling that they're more likely to invest in a free agent veteran for linebacker to play next to Fred Warner. But if not, Devin White, I think he ran a 4.40, one of the fastest times, if not the fastest time for a linebacker at the combine in history. I think he would make plenty of sense because they do need star talent on defense. And I think White is probably the best inside linebacker in this draft.
That's Chris Biderman. We have 30 seconds, but let me just ask you a random one going deep. Somebody on the text line wanted me to ask you about Jason Browning. I'm going to make an executive decision and assume he's talking about Folsom's Jake Browning from Washington. Not on a lot of big boards. Is kid going to get drafted?
You know what? I wish I could tell you. I've spent so much time focusing on the 49ers that I can tell you that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan basically said they're not in the quarterback market,
Gotcha.
And they didn't even interview with quarterbacks at the combine. So probably not going to come to the 49ers unless he goes undrafted and they want to bring in another undrafted rookie, which might end up leading to maybe they trade Nick Mullins or C.J. Beathard at some point this offseason. Probably not early in the offseason, but that could happen maybe towards training camp because they're going to have to wait on Jimmy Garoppolo to get healthy, and so Beathard and Mullins will be getting all the reps in the spring. But sorry, I don't have more on Jake Browning. I do know he's probably a late-round prospect, or he could go undrafted, depending on how things shake out.
Oh, I completely got you there. We'll have to shake that out, like you said, at the draft itself. You can read Chris Biderman all over the place at sacbee.com. Just hit that, go right to sports, and you got all the Niners laid out. Clean look on the website, too. They've changed that up. They're doing a fantastic job. And you get a chance, go to the top right-hand corner, hit subscribe, and you'll get the best journalism in the Sacramento area. Chris, we appreciate your time. Welcome back home. We'll talk to you soon.
No problem. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you. Take care. That is Chris Biderman of the Sacramento Bee.